Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and in this episode I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about outer tie rod ends. Okay, so keep in mind this is coming off of my driving school car. It's a 2005 Acura TSX, so you can kind of imagine the amount of wear and tear that I go through with, suspension as well as steering components because of the things that we're doing with this vehicle. Whether it's pulling over to the curb, doing three-point turns, just making turns in general, because during a road lesson we're doing countless numbers of maneuvers. Okay, so outer tie rod end could go bad for many reasons. Some of it could just be age, some of it could be dependent upon the type of roads that you're driving on. A lot of the times I tell the kids, make sure we're avoiding as many potholes as we can, as well as we're pulling over to the curb, we don't want to tap the curb, especially at a great momentum or rate of speed, because now what happens is it's going to put a lot of stress on your suspension as well as steering components. Okay, so your outer tie rod end looks something like this, and it's connected to an inner tie rod end that goes into your steering rack. Okay, so this would be connected to your knuckle, and like I said, there's a lot of different reasons that would go bad. Right, so I took the liberty of taking off this boot because I wanted to show you what the inside of it looks like, but this is the driver's side. Okay, so let me zoom you guys in and see if I can get us a really close-up view of this. So this, hopefully it comes through clearly right there. Let's see, back out, boom, right there. So this is dry rot. Okay, so this is original to the car, and the car is a 2005 Acura TSX, like I said. So the OEM part that I purchased was, I think, approximately $53, so that's why I went with the OEM route. I know a lot of people are using aftermarket stuff, but I figured for $53, it's really a no-brainer to go with an OEM product that lasted 16 years on the car. Okay, but what you want to look for is you want to look for any dry rot. If you have a cut or anything like that, and you see a lot of grease that have expelled or come out of this boot, then you know that it's time to replace your outer tie rod end. Okay, so this is a non-serviceable part because, as you can tell, there's no grease fitting or anything like that up here. Some aftermarket outer tie rod end will have a grease fitting at the very top where you can inject or pump in new grease into the fitting, and like I said, this OEM item did not have one. Okay, so I'll show you again here too. As you can tell, right about there is another dry rot that's already happening. So what happens is, as it ages, this will crack, and then eventually, the grease will come out. And once you don't have any more grease within the fitting, that's when, it'll start to clunk. It'll start to make some abnormal sound out of whether it's the right or the left wheel well. Okay, so like I said, I took the liberty, let me zoom you guys back out, of cutting out the rubber boot on my passenger side. Okay, so it just slides on top of the fitting like such, and there you have it. Okay, so there is a metal ring that sits right underneath this. Okay, and that is going to keep everything nice and tight. It's going to keep all the grease within this fitting in itself. All right, so let me see if I can show you guys. Well, there you go. Let me see if I can. There it is. So that silver part right there is the metal ring that snaps around the base right here, okay, of your outer tie rod end, and then, like I said, it's going to keep all the grease inside that fitting. All right, so looking at it, you can see that there is a ball joint right there. Okay, and the grease that's been inside this vehicle, like I said, for the last 15-16 years, as we're turning, moving the car, or as the suspension components is compressing and decompressing, all of this grease, of course, gets worked into the fitting in itself. All right, so grease, fluid, anything has a certain breaking point, so the viscosity of that grease is going to degrade over time. Okay, so what happens then is, if you can kind of just envision it with me. All right, so you take grease out of the tube, it's almost thick, it's got a nice consistency to it. As you kind of play with it, what happens now is it breaks down, and that's the viscosity of the grease changing. Okay, so like I said, imagine the grease being in this fitting for the last 16 years. Basically, when I took it out of the car, this was just free play, and it shouldn't be totally binding on you. Okay, but it also shouldn't be moving so freely, because then that means that the grease within that fitting is no longer doing the job that it's supposed to do, which is kind of keeping everything kind of nice and tight. Okay, So even with this one, even though the grease is still within this boot, okay, you can tell, you know, it's got a lot of play to it already. All right, so the new fittings were super nice and tight, and like I said, it felt 100 times better. All right, so these are some of the things that you want to look out for. Like I said, you know, you want to make sure that you're inspecting the boot often, okay? And if you have a grease fitting on top of your outer tie rod end, just make sure you do it, let's say, you know, every 2 to 3 oil changes, you know, so whatever it is for you, you know, I'm doing 5,000 miles a month on my car, so I do an oil change every month, so I'm always checking the fittings on not only the outer tie rod end, but also my control arms, etc., because I just want to make sure that the car doesn't break down on us, okay? But like I said, if you have a serviceable fitting, then definitely put some grease into it, you know, every 3 oil changes or so, just to look at it. And what you want to do is, if you have a grease fitting on top, you want to put enough grease where it's going to expel or push out the old grease, okay? And then you just basically wipe that off, and now you have new grease within this boot, and it's going to keep everything nice and tight for you, all right? So hopefully you guys enjoyed that presentation. I'm going to be doing a bunch of these because, like I said, you know, with the driving school being in full swing of things right now, I'm just burning through parts, and I'm going through a bunch of service things that I've been kind of putting off. So hopefully you guys like it. If you have anything in particular that you would like me to showcase or highlight, let me know. But I just recently rebuilt the whole entire front end of the TSX, and I'm probably going to do a video on how to do the entire front end of that car, since I do have multiples TSX for the driving school. All right, guys, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. I really appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. Any comments, concerns, or anything like that, put it in the comment section. All right, thanks so much, guys.